like the Bucks to be 3-1 heading into October. I don't think anyone saw that happening, especially with Brady leaving. So I've had a long relationship with Jason Light. He's been the GM since 2014 in Tampa, and I've interviewed him dozens of times. I said, would you sit down, during the bye week, which is where they're at right now, and either way, good or bad, go through how the season's going. He says, sure, we'll do it. So it just so happens they're 3-1. And the bulk of our conversation was on Baker Mayfield because I thought this was fascinating for him. They had Kyle Trask and they knew they wanted a veteran. And Baker, more than being courted by a team, Baker courted the Bucks. Baker came to them and was like, take a chance on me, if I'm going to quote ABBA, if I will. And Baker came to them and said, here's why I make sense. And they're like, well, we like Kyle. Kyle Trask is going to be a third-year quarterback. We like it. And he's like, give me a shot. Baker went in there and he won that competition outright. And they said Kyle Trask played well this preseason, but Baker was the dude. And I think the word "the dude" was what stuck with me because throughout this interview, Jason's hitting on me like, you don't understand. Baker's the dude. I'm like, well, explain it. It says Baker Mayfield, after the final cuts were made and he was announced the starter quietly without headlines, and it did not make news until this interview I did with him, took the offensive lineman to Bahamas and they went golfing for a weekend. And, that was on their week after cuts were made. And they, that one weekend before the regular season starts, he took the O-line to the Bahamas, gelled with them that way. Says that you could hear stories, and it's like almost like folklore now in Tampa, that during the week, people will be like, I saw Baker Mayfield out at this bar, and not in this bar to go get hammered or to go party and, causing headlines. I saw Baker at this bar with, and it's a string of teammates, and it's Baker going to local spots in Tampa, and he's buying dinner, and it's on nights on a Tuesday night where that's their off night, but he's with the guys. You've seen the mic'd up now a couple times. Week 1 when they beat the Vikings, and he told I think Byron Murphy, get your weight up. And I think they were kind of bashful about that. Like, was that supposed to be mic'd up or not? Who knows? But it was made the rounds. And then this week had a lot more explicit things to say when they won in New Orleans, and the mic'd up stuff is really colorful. And Baker, he's always walked the walk. He's also always talked the talk. And this story is really cool. And I think from the Bucs perspective, it's really cool for them too, because here was a team that had been building a roster, and Jason in particular had been building a roster of homegrown talent and really built a really good foundation of guys that it's not just, Godwin and Evans, who everyone knows, but they built offensive linemen in Tristan Wirfs, and they brought defensive linemen in Vita Vea, homegrown talent, and the entire defensive backfield, homegrown talent. And I think there was a bit of an edge in Jason's voice, and I'm interpreting this from based on our interview, like, that when Brady leaves, everyone just thinks this team's going to fall apart, but that dismisses 52 other players. And Baker also dismissed in so many ways, whether it be in Cleveland, Carolina, and of course he had the cup of coffee with the Rams, but the Rams didn't sign him to a big deal either. So for these two factions, this team that really believes they were a good team with or without Tom Brady, and for Baker Mayfield, who still believes he's a starting quarterback in the NFL, for them to be a perfect match and for them to be 3-1 going into the bye. And when they come back, they've had a cool deal. Fox is going to have the game. It's already been flexed from a 1:00 game to a 4:00 game because it's between the Lions and the Buccaneers, and no one expected that to be a game that mattered, but already it is. And the Bucs will be rocking the creamsicle jerseys, and they'll be doing that, and they'll be unveiling those. So there's a cool vibe in Tampa right now. And Jason, like the GM, is like, he knows. He's like, guys, I get it. It's week 4 or it's week 5. We're not doing any parades, and trust me, we've won a Lombardi. We know what that takes. But the Baker Mayfield story, I thought, is just a really cool redemption story, especially if you look at Cleveland, who bailed on him, and they're mired in this Watson thing, who I don't know if they would 100 times out of 100 times would tell you to your face that they're happy with the way that whole thing turned out.
I think there's a lesson to be learned here about how quickly we move on or throw people on the scrap heap. And I'm not going to try to say I told you so. I picked the Saints to win the NFC South. So
did I.
Not like I'm this crazy Bucs believer, but throughout the offseason, I kept saying, I was like, guys, a lot of the pieces of a Super Bowl roster are still there. You have a great receiver core. I know he moved to left tackle, but Tristan Wirfs is one of the best O-linemen doing it. The defense is littered with guys who beat the Chiefs in that game. They're all still there. And the way that so many people were like, yeah, but what's Baker going to do about it? And I'm like, did he really go from people arguing that he's a top 7-8 quarterback in the league to saying he can't do anything in the span of a year and a half? I don't think I ever fully believed that. And yeah, it's a month in. I don't know where it goes. I'm not ready
Sure.
to say the Bucs are contenders. There was a pretty obvious gap between them and the Eagles when they played.
Yep.
100%.
100%.
But it's still a cool story. It's great for Baker. It's cool for the Bucs. You absolutely have to take them seriously, at least as a team that can win the South. And yeah, there probably weren't enough people saying that over the summer.